Hey everyone, this is Nathas, and we have yet another opening of Battle for Whitefang Pass, the newest set from Solforge Fusion. So I've got another booster kit here, and we're going to open it to see what we have inside. So for anyone who hasn't seen any of my other videos or any of the other opening videos, this is the second set from Solforge Fusion. It's got some cards from set 1 and set 2 in it, but you have one deck from each faction, as well as some minions, as well as some Soulbind and Exalt cards, which are new things. And every once in a while, you can get a foil deck as well, so we'll see if we get anything cool. So we're going to start with our Tempest deck. There we go. We're starting with an Ardent Colossus, an Arrogant Stonefist, an Elementalist Ritual, a Firestorm, a Rageborn Eruptor, a Rolling Sentinel, a Solemn Warhound, a Spirit Golem Conclave, a Tortoise Colossus, and a Uranti Heartseeker. So our Forgeborn here is a Korok. So we've got Lightning Speed at level 2, Earthen Fists at level 3, and Demolish at level 4. So looking at this deck, there's a couple new cards here that I'm really excited about. So Elementalist Ritual is a card that I think can be really incredible in the right deck, especially if you have multiple elementals here. So in this deck, we actually have 3, which means this could be a deck that could be really powerful for this card. So just to pick this up and get it a little closer to the camera. So basically, you could choose 1. If you have an elemental in play, you choose 2 instead. So non-combat damage you deal this turn is increased by 4. You could deal 7 damage to a creature or player and deal 4 damage to all non-elemental creatures. So the way this resolves is if you pick non-combat damage you deal this turn is increased by 4, you can basically pick then deal 7 damage to a creature or player, and that will deal 7 plus 4, so it will deal 11. So if you have this with a Dark Heart or something else that deals direct damage like a Shambler, you can do so much damage with a card like this. So I think this card's going to be a sleeper for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, and for people who have played against it, this card is going to make a huge impact for decks like that. Shambler, Dark Heart, or anything else that could deal a little bit of direct damage. Also, if you play an Elementalist Ritual first and you play something like a Firestorm, you could deal extra damage to try to kill your opponents. And this deck has a couple things that deal direct damage to things. So it's like we've got the Solemn Warhound, we've got the Rolling Sentinel, which could deal damage to a creature if you move lanes into an opponent. If it moves lanes into something with an opposing creature. So there's a couple ways that you could really take advantage of that ritual. So Tortoise Colossus is a very interesting card because it has Defender and Mobility. You could activate it to lose Defender and gain Aggressive, but with a lot of cards that can either exhaust creatures and make them that they don't ready the next turn, or that can destroy creatures that are exhausted. This means you have to play a little harder around using this and activating it at the right times. So this will be an interesting card. Plus, Spirit Golem Conclave gives you 15 attack when you destroy the first 2 when you play it. And then when one of your creatures enters this lane, you could also give it plus 15 attack. So if you play something like a Rageborn Eruptor into that lane, you could give it 15 attack and it's already got breakthrough. So there's a couple really cool ways to take advantage. Plus, rolling is a new ability that I like a lot. So I hope to get a deck with multiple rolling soon. But it has mobility 1, and then it gives a creature, when it moves into a lane with an opposing creature, deal 5 damage to that creature. So it benefits mobility, or it adds mobility to cards, and it can be removal. And then Sentinel is a great card because if you're playing a lot of spells, you can make it really big really quick. So I think this is an interesting one. This is the most Elementalist I have with an Elementalist Ritual, so I'm interested to see if this is something that I can make work. There's just a lot of really cool cards, and I feel like a lot of the stuff that's in set 1 was probably there knowing that these cards would come in set 2. That way it's like everything was kind of probably very um, intentionally planned. So it's like a card that's there already could be really good with some of these new cards that might not have been as useful during set 1. So we're moving on to the Terra deck as long as I could get it open. There we go. Alright, we're starting with a Brashful Hunter, our Carnivorous Tarot, an Asperian Steel Plate, Feral Instinct, Lead the Charge, Soothing Decayosaur, Calisan, Twin Strength, Pterodon Mauler, and Pterodon Nest. So our Forgeborn is Oros. So it's got Shapeshift, or Shapeshift at level 2, Spirit Bond at level 3, and Dark Forge Drain at level 4. There's a couple really new cards here that are really cool. I think Carnivorous Tarot is one of my favorite cards I've seen so far. So it's basically Kindred, but when you deploy it, you also gain life, which will then buff it. If you have this in a deck with other Kindred cards or other Life Gain Matters cards, this can be absolutely game breaking because a lot of times your Kindreds are just small enough that if you don't gain life that same turn, they're going to die. So this deck only has one other way to gain life, which is the Soothing Decayosaur. But that Tarot is a card that I think is going to be so strong because I have a couple decks that have Kindred cards that I play, and they can get so big and out of hand so quickly. And the fact that it still gives you +5/+5 every time you gain life, and it gains life, it's just like it feels like a glow hive and like a Kindred card all in one. So Brashful's a new ability, and I think this is the first time I've opened one of these so far. So it gives a card aggressive and breakthrough. So I think this is like one of the more aggressive abilities in set 2, because a lot of times, like if you play something off Forge, even if it has breakthrough, you're not going to really get through. So being able to give something aggressive and breakthrough, you can really either use it as removal to play in an empty lane or play in a full lane and try to kill something. You could play it in an empty lane and try to sneak in extra damage, or you could play it over a minion or something with small defense to try to kill it and do extra damage. So this deck has quite a few things to increase power. The Pterodon Nest is a great one, even though there's 2 dinosaurs, which is not, I think, enough to really take advantage of the nest. But you can still give it the +6/+6 when you deploy it. You just might not get the dinosaur bonus of when you play the dinosaur in this lane. Give all of your other creatures +3/+3. All of your creatures, not all of your other. But Talisan with Lead the Charge can always be fun. I think Twin Strength is going to be really strong because it could give 2 creatures a big buff in attack and health. So at level 3, it's +8/+8. So this deck seems like it might be very aggressive. I wish, like I said, the Tarot had a little bit more life gain, but this is a card that I'm really going to be hoping that I open multiple copies of, so I can really play it in a nice Kindred deck. And actually, I assume the Tarot can be Betrayer too, which means it's almost like having a Betrayer Kindred, which is not really possible in set 1 because Kindred's a modifier word. So now we're going into Necrom. We've got an Abyssal Revenant, Bloodletting Stitcher, a Bride of Frankenbaum, Cacklebones, Darkshaper's Ritual, Doom Drake, Group Meal, Horrific Devourer, Red Wasteland, Stout Slime. So our Forgeborn is a Cersei. We've got Sorrow at level 2, Army Commander at level 3, and Soul Siphon at level 4. So this deck has a lot of really cool cards in it. So a Revenant is a card that's pretty strong on its own because when it's destroyed, you may deal damage to a creature. But having Abyssal on it means, like, hey, they might want to try to destroy it so you don't get your Abyssal trigger, but they have to not only kill it, but then they're going to have to deal with a trigger of getting damage to another creature. So I think Revenant could be really strong, and Abyssal might be a pretty good ability on that. So Bloodletting Stitcher. Stitchers are always a strong card. Bloodletting is one of the new abilities where you could deal damage to yourself to give it additional attack. Stitchers tend to have lower attack and standards or lower attack stats. So being able to get more attack could definitely be worth taking a little bit of extra damage because you're basically trading 2 for 4. Bride of Frankenbaum is a card that I think is going to be a lot of fun to play, just because when you slay something, you can play a spell for free. So it's kind of like chaining, where it's level gated, or same thing with Spite Maiden, but you can potentially use it to like fight something, play a spell for free, and then this, if you fight again with it, you can play another spell for free. So this can be a really interesting card that lets you um, get some very interesting lines of play. Cacklebones is another great one where if you slay a creature with it, you can destroy a creature, just non-level gated or anything. So it's got a lower attack ability, but it's something that could be really strong. So Darkshaper's Ritual is another ritual. So this one is off of Beasts. So when the creature is destroyed this turn, you gain 4 health. Play up to 2 zombie brute minions, and each enemy player destroys one of their creatures. So that's really strong for being able to get 2 of these abilities if you have a beast. So here there's only 1 beast in the deck, but if you play this with a deck that's very beast heavy, that could be a really strong card. Doom is one of the other new abilities where you could destroy another one of your creatures to deal damage equal to its power to a creature or player. So if you have a huge creature, like if you have something that's like a 20/20, you could basically use your Doom Drake to deal 20 damage directly to an opponent. So it could be really strong. It's kind of like a cutthroat, but with the extra ability of being able to deal damage to the opponent as well. So Red Wasteland, I've heard this card talked about a lot, and I'm not actually really seeing it yet. So this one's deploy, destroy your level 1 and level 2 Red Wasteland. You may destroy one of your creatures to play a card for free, so that's really strong right off the bat, because you could destroy a creature to play a spell too. Um, one of your creatures is destroyed before combat. Give your creatures in this lane +5/+5. Wow. So it's a buff, plus it's a free spell ability, plus it's a destruction trigger. So that could be a really good card. So I'm very excited to see how this plays out in practice. And the last thing I'm going to mention is Horrific Devourer, because Horrific is another card that I've not really seen, or ability I've not seen before now. But you give an opposing creature -5/-5. So it's just kind of removal on a stick or on a creature. And then when you deploy it, you can destroy one of your exalts to destroy a creature in the same level. So it's kind of like Cutthroat as well in that regard. So this has a lot of really strong cards. Like I think purple is going to have a big upgrade because of some of these new cards. Like Bride of Frankenbaum is going to be great. I think Cacklebones is going to be great. Devourer, if you play a lot of exalts, can also be really strong. So, but I'm really excited to try to doom like an Arboreus or Krogaius or something like that at my opponent. So that'll be a cool way to win. All right, and we got one more deck. It is our land. So unfortunately, no foils yet, but I hope to hit one soon. All right. So we're starting with a Bulwark Bash, a Combat Techno Hulk, a Combat Warden, a Gizmo, Glitch Scout, Guardian's Wall, Isolate, Redact, Shardbound Vexer, and Stout Captain. We've got a Steel Rosetta with Inspire at level 2, Nanotech Disruptor at level 3, and Optimize at level 4. Wow. I've not seen Optimize yet, so it's basically you can double your Mega Gizmo ability if you replace the Mega Gizmo that you play with it to give the next creature you play +6/+6. Nanotech Disruptor is also interesting because it's kind of like an Apocalypse ability, but it's just for creatures. So something like Gizmo wants to be replaced, which can be really interesting with that ability. Um, this one has a couple interesting pieces of removal because you can give armor to a creature, deal damage equal to the armor to an enemy creature to remove something. You could isolate to deal damage to a creature that has nothing adjacent to it, and you can use Redact to kill something that has 10 or less power. So Shardbound Vexer can remove power instead of toughness. So that could be really interesting in terms of, hey, I'll attack with my Vexer, your power goes down, then I'm going to Redact the next turn. There are not a ton of warriors, just one. So the Stout Captain is not going to have a ton of usage in terms of its other ability, unless you pair it with another warrior deck. But unfortunately, I'm not a huge fan of the combat modifier, and we have two of them here. But that being said, this is still a really cool deck because it's just got a lot of really interesting removal that I wouldn't have seen before, or that I haven't seen in the same deck together. So that was another opening of a Battle for Whitefang Pass booster kit. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll probably be opening some more real soon. Thanks, and have a good one.